Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Mr. Cobalt, and in this video I'm going to go over a couple examples of how to balance chemical equations. In the last video, in the previous video, I had gone over the steps on how to balance chemical equations. So I'm going to go over those steps while doing a couple of practice problems. So the first thing I want to say is the first step is a lot of times they might give you the equation, but it's not balanced, and then you just have to count the number of atoms on each side and make sure each element is balanced with the proper number of atoms. In this case, they don't give you the words. You skip that step, so it saves you another step. But however, a lot of times they'll give you a problem like these where they don't give you the equation, but you have to translate the words into an equation. So you have to know how to name the different kinds of compounds, ionic compounds and molecular compounds. So if you don't know how to name those, then it's going to be hard to get the formula right, and it's going to be hard to balance the equation properly. So you got to make sure that you know how to name things. So if you don't know how to name things, or if that's a little bit tricky, then you might want to go back to my earlier video on how to name ionic compounds and molecular compounds, and I can link that in the description as well. In this type of problem where they give you a paragraph of words, you have to be able to decipher this into reactants and products. So you got to look for the keywords that are going to tell you, oh, this is a product, this is a reactant, okay? And then once you figure that out, you can write out the formulas if you know like the names of the compounds. And so I'm going to go over a couple of things. So I'm going to go over the steps here. So the first step, if you're given a problem like this, where you have to decipher this into an equation, then you gotta figure out what the reactant and product is. So it says write a balanced equation for the reaction between solid cobalt-3 oxide and solid carbon. Okay, so stop there. It's saying that the equation for the reaction between. So if the reaction between these two things, if the reaction is between these two things, then that indicates that those two things are the reactants. So they're going to come first in the equation. So we can write those down. So here I have cobalt-3 oxide. So I need to know how to name that as well, or go from the name to the formula. So I know that the 3 is the charge on the cobalt. So if I write CO3+, that's going to be my cobalt ion, so that's cobalt-3. And the oxide refers to oxygen, and the oxygen is in group 6. So if I remember that the rule, if I'm in groups 5 through 8, the rule to find the charge is the group number minus 8. So 6 minus 8 is -2, so the oxygen is going to have a 2 minus charge. And so to find the formula, I just do the crisscross method. So I have a 3 here, put that there as a subscript, take the 2, put it by the cobalt as a subscript, and I get CO2O3. So there, that's my formula. That's the formula for cobalt-3 oxide. So I've got that. It says it's a solid, so I need to put the state down as a solid there. So that's the first reactant. And so then I'm going to add the second reactant. The second reactant is solid carbon. So I'm going to put down C for carbon. And here it's really important to make sure that you know what the atomic elements are and the molecular elements are. And remember, most elements by themselves are going to be atomic elements. So if you find pure elements, they're mostly going to be made up of atoms, right? They're not going to be bonded together into molecules. There are a few that are going to be bonded into molecules, and those you need to know. So those would be things like the diatomic the diatomic molecules like hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, chlorine, bromine, iodine, so on and so forth. So you got 7 of the diatomic ones. And you also have phosphorus, which exists as P4 in the elemental state. And then you got sulfur, which exists as S8 in the elemental state. So you need to know what the elemental or what the molecular elements are. Because, for example, if you're given that you produce hydrogen as a reactant or as a product, or if you're using hydrogen as a reactant, you need to know that hydrogen is a diatomic molecule, so it's not going to exist by itself. It's going to exist as H2. But if you only write down H in your equation and then you start balancing your equation, you're going to be wrong, right? Even if your equation is actually balanced, you're not going to have the right formula and you're not going to have the right reaction, right? So, and you're not going to get full credit. So make sure you know what the molecular elements are. And there's only like 9 of them. There's 7 diatomic, and then there's phosphorus, and then there's sulfur. You need to know those. Anything that is not one of these is going to be atomic. So here we have carbon, which is not one of the molecular elements. So it's just going to be by itself, 1C. And then it's a solid, right? Because we're told it's solid carbon. Okay, so next is our products. So it says to produce. So that's a dead giveaway that whatever follows is going to be the product or products of the reactant. And then it says to produce solid cobalt. So again, cobalt is one of those elements that is not a molecular element. So it's going to be by itself solid because we're told it's solid cobalt, and it produces carbon dioxide gas. So we have CO2 gas. Okay? And so again, I need to understand what carbon dioxide is, so I need to know how to name them and go from the name to the formula. So carbon means I only have 1 carbon, and dioxide means I have 2 oxygen. And it's a gas, so I have the gas as a state there. Okay, so now I have my equation, but it's not balanced. So at this point, I'm going to continue with the steps. So now that I have my equation, now I want to go to the next step. And the next step is that I'm going to balance elements that are part of a compound first, and then elements that are not part of a compound, that are by themselves in the elemental form, pure elemental form, those I'll do later. So you'll see carbon is an elemental form, cobalt is an elemental form, so I can save those till later. So oxygen is part of a compound, so I can do oxygen first. So with oxygen, I have 3 oxygens here, and I have 2 oxygens here. So if I do 3 and 2, if I do 2 over here, then I need to get 1 more oxygen on this side. So then what I can do is I can figure out, okay, what times 3 or what times 2 is going to get me 3, right? So if you think about it, you can remember we can do fractions, right? So if I think about this, I can say, well, okay, well, if I have 3 here, and if I need 3 over here, then I can multiply this by 3 halves, because 1 and a half times 2 will give me 3. So if I do 3 halves, I can do 3 halves on this side, 3 halves. And so 2 times 3 halves gives me 3, which is the same number as oxygens there. So I'm allowed to do that when I'm balancing the equations first. I'll have to get rid of the half later, but that's at a later step. Okay, so next Now I have my oxygens balanced. So that's good for oxygen. But now let's see. So I have cobalt. Let's do cobalt first, so I can go to cobalt and then carbon last. So you usually want to do metals first before nonmetals. So I have 2 cobalts here and I have 1 there. So I can put a 2 here. So now I balanced my cobalt. And I was able to do that. You want to balance this, because if I try to balance this, then I'm going to undo the balance of the oxygen. So that's why we save the elements for last. Okay, so now I can balance the cobalt here. But now I can balance the carbon here by balancing this one. So here you can see that I have 3/2 carbon, and I have 1 carbon here. So what I can do is I can put a 3/2 here. So now I have 3/2 carbon and I have 3/2 carbon. So now I can double check. I have two cobalt, 2 cobalt. So 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. And then 3/2 times 2 is 3. Okay, that's good. And then I have 3/2 times 1 is 3/2. And then I have 3/2 times 1 is 3/2. So it's all balanced. So to balance or to double check and balance your elements, to balance the atoms, you always multiply the coefficient you have by the subscript. And so that'll give you the total number due to that particular compound or element. Okay, so now we have a balanced equation. Now we can't leave it like this because we have the fractions. So to get rid of the fractions, the denominator is 2, so we multiply everything by 2. So we multiply this by 2, so that's going to be 2. We multiply this by 2, but that's going to get rid of the 2, and you'll have a 3. And then 2 times 2 is 4, so that's going to be a 4. And then again, multiply this by 2, we get rid of that, and that's going to be a 3. And so now that's going to be a balanced equation. Okay. So let's go ahead and do the second one. So for the second one, well, let's do the second one for another video. So I hope this is clear. If you like this, go ahead and share it with your friends, and click on the like button, and put a comment in the comment section if you want to do it that way. Also, you can hit the notification button, and you can subscribe to my channel if you want to as well. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.